April 26, 1717. Cape Cod, Massachusetts. 2 o'clock in the morning. The water temperature was 48 degrees Fahrenheit. The winds were hitting 70 miles per hour. The waves were breaking at over 20 feet. And in the darkness, 500 feet from the shore, close enough that the men on the beach could hear screaming, a ship was dying. She had a name that nobody on that beach had ever heard. She was carrying treasure that nobody on that beach could have imagined. She had a crew of over 140 men who had chosen her over every other ship on the Atlantic. And in the space of less than 4 minutes, she was gone. The masts snapped first. Then the hull rolled. Then the weight of everything she was carrying, the weight of the most spectacular single accumulation of pirate treasure in maritime history, pulled her down into the sand. 146 men went into that water. 2 came out. The treasure stayed in the sand, 500 feet from shore, for 267 years. 267 years, while Cape Cod was built above it, while the American Revolution was fought, while trains replaced horses and planes replaced ships, while the entire modern world was constructed overhead. The Whydah Gally lay in the sand, waiting. In 1984, a man named Barry Clifford found a ship's bell. When he cleaned the sand off it, 4 words appeared. The Whydah Gally, 1716. And everything changed. Because the Ouida Gally was not a legend. She was not a story. She was real. And what she was carrying when she went down, what has been sitting in the sand off Cape Cod since before the United States of America existed, is worth $10 billion. Today on Bilge Bound, we are going through the bottom of Cape Cod. We are going to tell you about the pirate who built the greatest floating fortune in maritime history. We are going to tell you about the storm that took it from him. We are going to tell you about the woman he was sailing home to. And we are going to tell you about the discovery that proved everything the legends said was true. Stay with me. Because this story, the real story, not the one you've heard, is stranger and sadder and more extraordinary than anything the legends managed to capture. One thing. Before we meet Black Sam, we are 15 subscribers away from 1,000. 15 people away from a milestone that changes what this channel can do for you. If you haven't subscribed, one tap right now. And drop Whydah Crew in the comments. That's it. Back to the $10 billion. Every great treasure story has a man at its center. And the man at the center of this one is not who you'd expect. Samuel Bellamy was born in Devonshire, England in 1689. He was not born into money. He was not born into opportunity. He was born into exactly the kind of English working-class life that the British Empire in 1700 had very carefully designed to stay exactly that way. Poor men went to sea. Rich men owned the ships. Everyone knew their place. Except Bellamy didn't. He came to the American colonies sometime around 1715, young, broke, and with a plan. There were stories of Spanish treasure ships sunk off the coast of Florida. The great fleet of 1715 had gone down in a hurricane, spilling enormous wealth onto the sea floor. Bellamy wanted to go find it. He needed financing. He went to Cape Cod to find investors. And in a tavern, or on a beach, the accounts differ, he met a girl named Maria Hallett. Everything you need to know about Sam Bellamy, you can learn from what happened next. The girl was young, beautiful, the daughter of a respectable Cape Cod family. Bellamy was a penniless English sailor with a plan that hadn't worked yet. They fell in love anyway. He promised her. He would leave. He would make his fortune. He would come back wealthy enough that nobody could tell them they didn't belong together. And then he left. He never found the Spanish treasure. But what he found instead was arguably more valuable, though it would cost him everything. he met a privateer named Benjamin Hornigold. Hornigold was operating out of Nassau, in the Bahamas, at a time when Nassau was essentially an ungoverned pirate republic. The Royal Navy had retreated, the colonial governors had lost control. And into that vacuum had stepped men like Hornigold, men who had decided that the rules of the British Empire applied to other people, not to them. Bellamy sailed with Hornigold. He learned. He watched how a pirate captain operated, how he assessed a target, how he used speed and positioning and reputation as weapons, and he disagreed with Hornigold on almost everything. Hornigold refused to attack English ships. Patriotism and old loyalty. He would take French ships, Dutch ships, Spanish ships, but not English. Bellamy had no such loyalty, because in Bellamy's mind, England was not his country. England was the country that had decided, by virtue of his birth, that he would be poor, that his labor would belong to men who had never worked, that the woman he loved would be kept from him because he didn't have the right family name or the right bank balance. They parted ways, and Bellamy went his own direction. What happened next was one of the most extraordinary careers in the history of the Atlantic Ocean. In just over 1 year, 13 months roughly, Sam Bellamy captured more than 50 ships, 50 merchants, slavers, supply vessels, a royal mail packet, an entire parade of Atlantic commerce, systematically stripped of its cargo and its valuables. He became known as Black Sam, not for violence, not for cruelty, for his hair. Every other pirate captain of the era wore a powdered wig, the fashion of the time, the marker of a man of standing. Bellamy refused. He wore his own black hair, tied back with a simple black ribbon. In an era where appearance was everything, where the wig was the visible symbol of belonging to the right class, he refused it. The message was deliberate. I am not one of you. I don't want to be one of you. I am something else entirely. His crew understood. His crew were men who had come from the same place Bellamy had. Poor, excluded, working their whole lives on ships that made other men wealthy, sailing routes that enriched the merchants back home while the sailors went home with almost nothing. On the Whydah, they ran things differently. Every man had a vote. Every man had a share. Black sailors and white sailors received the same pay, held the same standing, had the same voice. This was not normal for 1717. This was not normal anywhere in the world in 1717, and it is why Bellamy called himself, and his men called him, the Prince of Pirates. Not because he was richer than other pirates, because he had built something on that ship that the rest of the world, with all its empires and navies and laws, had not yet managed to build. A community where people were actually equal. Now, let's talk about the ship, because the Whydah Gally is not like any other treasure ship in history. She was built in 1715, brand new, state-of-the-art, the cutting edge of Atlantic maritime technology. She was designed as a slave ship and merchant vessel, 300 tons, fast enough to catch wind, large enough to carry significant cargo. By pirate standards, she was extraordinary. When Bellamy took her in February 1717, capturing her after a running battle in the Caribbean, he didn't just take a ship, he upgraded his entire operation. He immediately added more cannons. He stripped unnecessary weight. He reconfigured the cargo space. And then he sailed her up the Atlantic coast, adding to her cargo with every ship he captured. By the time the Ouida was heading north toward Cape Cod in April 1717, she was carrying, and I want you to understand these numbers because they are extraordinary, she was carrying 180 bags of gold and silver coins, each bag weighing between 50 and 100 pounds. Do the math. At minimum, that is 9,000 pounds of precious metal. At maximum, 18,000 pounds, 4.5 tons, of gold and silver, on one ship. But the coins were only part of it. There was also gold dust, captured from vessels trading on the West African routes, gold dust that the merchants and slavers had accumulated from the most profitable trade networks in the world. There was ivory, elephant tusks, carried in the hold from African trading posts. There were jewels. Jewelry taken from wealthy passengers on captured ships. Rings, necklaces, brooches, small in individual value, enormous in aggregate. There were trade goods, bolts of fine cloth, spices, manufactured goods from a dozen different Atlantic ports. And on top of all of that physical cargo, there was the value that only historians and appraisers can calculate. The Whydah is not just a treasure ship. She is the only verified pirate shipwreck ever discovered anywhere in the world. Every other pirate ship is a story, a legend, a rumor, a record in an old archive. The Whydah is real, which means the artifacts recovered from her, the coins, the weapons, the tools, the personal items of 146 men who sailed under the Black Flag, are not just historically interesting. They are historically unique. The total valuation, combining the physical treasure with the historical premium of the only verified pirate wreck in existence, runs conservatively to $3 billion. With the full archaeological value accounted for, and the Discovery era estimates that Barry Clifford has discussed publicly, $10 billion. $10 billion. In the sand. 500 feet from shore for 267 years. Here is something that the standard telling of the Whydah story almost always leaves out. When Bellamy captured the Whydah, he captured her from a captain named Lawrence Prince. Prince had been transporting slaves. The ship had just completed a voyage from West Africa to Jamaica on the Triangle trade. There is a significant historical debate about what happened to the enslaved people on board the Whydah. Some accounts suggest they were freed by Bellamy. Some suggest they were held. Some suggest that the extraordinary diversity of the Whydah's crew, which included men of African descent in positions of full equality, reflects the presence of formerly enslaved people who had joined voluntarily. The archaeological evidence has been surprising. Among the artifacts recovered from the Whydah, researchers have found items that appear to be African in origin, items that would have belonged to crew members with African heritage. The Whydah's crew was not a white pirate crew that happened to include a few black sailors. It was a genuinely multiracial crew in which race did not determine rank, pay, or standing. In 1717, on a pirate ship off the coast of Massachusetts, 308 years ago, that is what the Whydah actually was. Not just a treasure ship, a floating argument for a different kind of world. Before the storm, before the sandbar, before the bell in the sand. There was a woman on the shore. Maria Hallett was a real person. She was born in Eastham on Cape Cod around 1695. She was young when she met Bellamy. Accounts vary, but she was probably between 17 and 20. She was, by the accounts of her neighbors, unusually beautiful, unusually spirited, the kind of woman who attracted attention in a community that was not entirely comfortable with women who attracted attention. She and Bellamy were together for a period. How long exactly is not clear. Before he left for Florida, he left her with a promise. I will come back wealthy. I will come back as a man who can stand before your family and your community and claim you properly. What happened next is one of the most heartbreaking footnotes in the entire story. Maria Hallett became pregnant. In 1715, Cape Cod, an unmarried woman pregnant with the child of a foreign sailor, was not a minor social embarrassment. It was catastrophic. She was disowned by her family. She was publicly shamed. She was cast out of the community that had been her entire world. The child was born, and the child died. The accounts suggest the infant was only weeks old. Whether the child's death was natural, or whether the grief and poverty and exposure that Mariah's situation had reduced her to contributed to it, nobody says directly. But the implication in the historical record is dark. Maria Hallett was tried for infanticide. She was acquitted. But the acquittal didn't restore her standing. It didn't give her back her family. It didn't bring Bellamy back. She lived in a small shack on the Cape Cod dunes, alone, waiting, for years. And then, on April 26, 1717, a storm hit, and the ship she had been waiting for appeared out of the darkness, 500 feet from shore. Whether Maria was on the beach that night, whether she saw what happened, the historical record doesn't confirm. But the local legend is very specific. The legend says she was there, that she saw the masts go down, that she stood in the rain and the dark and watched the ocean take the man she had been waiting for. 2 men survived. Sam Bellamy was not one of them. She is sometimes called the Witch of Wellfleet, not because she was a witch, but because the community that had already stripped her of everything else needed something to explain the wildness of her grief. After Bellamy died, Maria Hallett lived on those dunes for decades. She never left. She died alone on Cape Cod, within sight of the water, within sight of where the Whydah lay in the sand, waiting for someone who was never coming back. Cape Cod is shaped like a bent arm. The forearm extends east into the Atlantic. The fist curves north. And where the forearm and the fist meet, where the shallow sandbars of the inner cape extend out into the deep water, ships die. Not occasionally. Constantly. The maritime records of Cape Cod in the 17th and 18th centuries read like a continuous catalog of disaster. Hundreds of ships, thousands of sailors. The Cape did not discriminate. British warships, merchant vessels, fishing boats. The ocean came in from the northeast, loaded with the fetch of the entire open Atlantic behind it, and hit those sandbars without warning. Bellamy knew this. He was navigating carefully. He had a pilot, a man named John Julian, a Native American from the Cape Cod region who knew these waters, specifically to guide the Whydah through the danger. On April 26th, the weather turned. It turned fast. A nor'easter, the New England storm system that brings northeast winds and rain off the open Atlantic, moved in within hours. By midnight, the winds were at hurricane force. By 1 in the morning, visibility was essentially zero. By 2 in the morning, the Whydah was in the breakers. The sandbar caught her, not gently, not slowly. The Whydah, running before the storm, traveling at speed, hit the sandbar at what investigators later estimated was between 8 and 12 knots. Think about what that means. 300 tons of ship, 4.5 tons of treasure, 46 cannons, traveling at 12 knots, hitting a sandbar in the dark. The impact broke her keel. The masts went over, not snapped off cleanly, but torn, violently, with all the rigging attached. The weight of the cannons and the treasure shifted immediately, rolling the hull to port. The ocean came in everywhere at once. 146 men went into the water. In 48-degree water, in hurricane-force winds, in breaking surf that was throwing 20-foot waves onto a sandbar 500 feet from shore. 2 men made it to the beach. Thomas Davis, a Welsh carpenter who had been forced to join the crew. John Julian, the pilot, who had grown up swimming in these waters. Every other man on the Whydah died, including Sam Bellamy. His body was never identified. The treasure went into the sand 500 feet from shore, and the Atlantic covered it, and the sand shifted over it, and the world moved on. For 267 years, Barry Clifford grew up on Cape Cod. As a boy, his uncle told him about the Whydah, not as history, as legend, as something that lived in the water near where he lived. Clifford grew up to become a professional underwater explorer. And at some point, inevitable perhaps for a man who had grown up with that story, he decided to find her. The search took years. not because the Whydah was hard to find, but because previous searchers had been looking for the wrong thing. They were looking for a ship, for a wreck, for something that looked like a ship. The Atlantic doesn't preserve ships. It dissolves them. 267 years of salt water, of biological activity, of shifting sand and storm surge and current. What remains of a wooden ship is not a ship. It is what marine archaeologists call a concretion. A mass of sand, rust, salt, biological material, and artifact, compressed by time and pressure into something that looks like a rock. Treasure hunters who were looking for chests full of gold found nothing. Because there were no chests, there was a sandbar full of rocks. Clifford understood this. He looked for anomalies, concentrations of metal, disturbances in the seafloor that didn't match the natural topography. In 1984, he found her. The bell was the proof. When his team brought it up and cleaned it, the inscription was clear. The Whydah Gally 1716. Not 1715 when she was built. Not 1717 when she sank. 1716, the year she was registered. The year she was formally commissioned as the vessel she was when Bellamy took her. The bell was the smoking gun, the legal proof. The artifact that allowed Clifford to file a claim on the wreck, that allowed excavation to begin, that turned a legend into a legal and historical reality. Since 1984, the Ouida excavation has been ongoing. More than 200,000 artifacts have been recovered. 200,000. Coins, cannons, weapons, jewelry, medical instruments, personal items, pipes, combs, buckles, buttons, the domestic details of the lives of 146 men who chose to sail under the black flag. A silk stocking, a human leg bone, still wearing a silk stocking and a shoe. The bones of a man whose identity we cannot confirm, but who we can place precisely. The leg that wore that stocking was standing on that ship on the night of April 26, 1717. The artifacts have told us things that no historical document could have told us. They confirmed the democratic nature of the crew. Coins from more than 50 different countries and colonies, reflecting a crew drawn from every corner of the Atlantic world. They confirmed the African presence, items of clear African origin, personal possessions carried by crew members who came from or had connections to the African continent. They confirmed the wealth, gold dust still in the bags it was stored in, silver coins still stacked in the way they were packed before the ship went down. And they confirmed something more fundamental than any of those specific facts. They confirmed that the Whydah was real, that Black Sam Bellamy was real, that the community he built on that ship was real, that the dream, the absurd, dangerous, ultimately fatal dream of a poor English sailor who decided that the rules didn't apply to him, was real. He didn't survive to collect his treasure. He didn't survive to go back to Maria Hallett on the dunes. He didn't survive to prove to the world that a man without a wig or a title or a family name could build something worth $10 billion. But the ship proved it for him. In the sand, waiting. 267 years. The Whydah Gally is not the greatest treasure story in history because of the gold. It is the greatest treasure story in history because of what the gold was for. Sam Bellamy was sailing home. He was done. The man who had captured 50 ships and accumulated the greatest single pirate fortune ever recorded was not heading for a new raid or a new port or a new conquest. He was heading for a dune on Cape Cod. And a woman who had waited for him. He was 48 hours away when the storm hit. We know this because of the ship's course, because of the testimony of the 2 survivors, because of what the artifacts found in the wreck tell us about where the ship was in its voyage. 48 hours, 2 days. The difference between everything he had built and everything he had promised. The ocean doesn't care about 48 hours. The ocean doesn't care about promises. The ocean doesn't care about the fairness of taking a man within reach of his destination and then swallowing him anyway. The Whydah sits in a museum in Provincetown, Massachusetts now. The artifacts that Barry Clifford's team has recovered are displayed, studied, cataloged. The children who visit the museum can hold replicas of the coins. They can see the bell. They can read about the Prince of Pirates who refused to wear a wig. But the excavation is not finished. A significant portion of the wreck remains in the sand. Estimates vary, but researchers believe that only a fraction of the total wealth and artifacts have been recovered, which means the treasure is still there. Not all of it, but enough. Enough gold dust and silver coins and ivory and jewels to make every treasure hunter who has ever dreamed of finding something real in the deep water understand why this wreck matters. The Whydah Gally has been giving up her secrets for 40 years. She will give up more. And each artifact that comes to the surface is one more piece of evidence for the same thing, that a poor English sailor from Devonshire once built something extraordinary on the open Atlantic. That it was real, that it mattered, that the ocean took it but couldn't erase it. The bell is the proof. The Whydah Gally, 1716. 4 words, 267 years in the dark. And then, light. Sam Bellamy sailed 50 ships, built a democracy on the Atlantic, left behind the only verified pirate wreck in history, and died 48 hours from home. Some stories don't have happy endings, but some stories don't need them. Because the story itself, the truth of what was built on that ship, what was carried in that hold, what was found in that sand, is enough. If you watched this entire investigation, if you stayed through Maria Hallett and the storm and the bell and the 200,000 artifacts, then you are exactly the person this channel was built for. We are 15 subscribers from 1,000. Subscribe, drop Whydah Crew in the comments, or tell me, what would you have done differently? If you were Barry Clifford in 1984, standing over a bell that read the Whydah Gally 1716, would you have told the world or kept the secret? Next time on Bilge Bound, we go after a story that makes the Whydah look straightforward. A pirate king who built an empire no government wanted to acknowledge, a treasure that 3 different countries claimed jurisdiction over, and a mystery that maritime lawyers are still arguing about today. That investigation is coming, and I want you there for it.